Johnson, who do you care about more, me or Emily? My mother-in-law clung to my husband, demanding an answer with desperation in her voice. It was as if she was competing with me, his wife, for his affection. My name is Emily, a 35-year-old housewife. My husband, Johnson, is 37, and we have a son, Shan, who is 5. Since we got married, we've been living in a rented apartment, just the 3 of us. However, last year, after my father-in-law passed away from illness, my mother-in-law, Jessica, now 62, found herself living alone. She lives just a 10-minute drive from us and suddenly begged Johnson to move in with her. Unable to bear the loneliness, it's so lonely by myself. I can't even swallow my food. I can't sleep at night, worried that I might fall ill or have an accident without anyone noticing. Johnson, won't you live with me? You're all I have, she pleaded. Faced with such a plea, Johnson couldn't say no. I was initially bewildered by the sudden request to move in together, but Jessica emphasized her loneliness so much, and my husband seemed so sympathetic that I felt I had no choice but to accept. Johnson has a younger sister, 3 years his junior, who's married and living far away. It seemed Jessica had no intention of relying on her, so we moved into Jessica's house. At first, she seemed delighted with our company, always in high spirits, doting on Shan, spoiling him with sweets and toys. After a while, I began to notice something unsettling. Whenever I was talking with Johnson, Jessica would watch us from a distance with a look in her eyes that was frightening. It was as if she was glaring with jealousy to her boyfriend talking to another woman. That's the intensity of the gaze she had fixed on us. After holding my gaze for a moment, Jessica would routinely prepare coffee and bring it over to us. Looks like you're having fun. Jessica would chime in, cutting into the conversation. My husband, showing no suspicion toward Jessica, replied, "Oh, thanks," and started drinking his coffee. Then began a conversation with Jessica. Jessica would then laugh with my husband so heartily it could be called traumatic, occasionally glancing at me sitting quietly beside them with what seemed like a triumphant, "How do you like that?" expression. This became a frequent occurrence. Months passed, and Jessica's demeanor started to clearly change depending on whether I was alone in the house or if my husband was present. It happened when our son was at kindergarten, and I was alone with Jessica. She called out to me from the bathroom in a loud voice, "Emily, come here." Rushing over, I found Jessica in the bathroom, silently pointing at something. Following the direction of her pointing finger, I saw small black spots on the bathroom wall. Oh, mold. It's not just mold. You're the one I asked to clean the bathroom. How could you not notice this? I'm so sorry. When it was just the 2 of us living here, there was never any mold. Where exactly were you looking when you cleaned? I really am sorry. I didn't check behind the door. I'll take care of it right away. I apologized to Jessica and meticulously cleaned the mold with cleaner. Jessica, I finished cleaning the bathroom. I believe all the mold is gone now. Sitting in the living room, Jessica only replied, "Well, that's expected." Before heading out that evening, I went to pick up Shan from his class, and we both returned home. It seems my husband had finished work early, as his car was already in the driveway. Entering the house with my son, I heard noise from the bathroom. Curious, I saw Jessica, donned in a mask and apron, fervently cleaning the bathroom. Then my husband confronted me with unbelievable words. "Emily, don't make Mom do all this. It's cold in the bathroom, and Mom's back seems to be hurting. This job is surely too tough. Maybe you should be the one helping out, right? But I cleaned it thoroughly today after Jessica told me about the mold." Hearing this from the bathroom, Jessica said, "I found more of those little black mold spots elsewhere, but I didn't want to upset Emily again. So I figured if Emily doesn't notice them, I should just clean them up myself." She had this timid look on her face that she wouldn't show me. "I won't get mad even if you're worried I might, Emily. Your mother-in-law is just trying not to bother you in her own way. It's okay, Mom. You're getting your clothes wet. You'll catch a cold. Just finish up and get changed. My husband intervened. With that, I murmured, I wanted to clean more, but I guess this is as far as I go today, and headed to the living room. As I left, Jessica gave me a quick sideways glance that left me lost for words. My husband handed Jessica a towel and urged her to warm up by the heater. She smiled with satisfaction. To my surprise, this made me quite angry at Jessica. She's commanding around me, but with my husband there, she plays this sweet and fragile mother-in-law, considerate of her tyrannical daughter-in-law. The real trouble was that my husband, who should be on my side, completely sympathized with Jessica's side. It seemed that Jessica had sensed this too, framing me as the villain and herself as the tragic heroine attempting to knock me down. That's how it appeared to me. Jessica has always favored my husband. Even at family gatherings, she cared for him more than his own sister. She would constantly say Johnson, Johnson, offering him her homemade dishes or giving him money. His sister, my sister-in-law, must have felt that her brother was more loved. Although she's married and living far away, she doesn't seem very close with her own mother, and I got the impression she keeps her distance from her family home. My sister-in-law went to public middle and high schools and then to a vocational college. But my husband alone went through middle school exams to college and even had experience studying abroad. There might have always been a difference in how much money was spent on the siblings. Last year, the passing of my father-in-law probably fueled Jessica's obsession with her son even more. And then some time had passed as the full brunt of winter settled in. The cold intensified day by day in my area. The snow had already piled up and temperatures frequently dipped below freezing. One such day, which happened to be a holiday, I woke up early to bake homemade bread, a practice I used to do often when we first got married but had not done much since we moved in with Jessica. My husband had requested the day before, I'd love to have some of Emily's bread again, so I started the prep work early in the morning. By breakfast time, the bread was perfectly baked. Nothing beats freshly baked bread, right, Dad? I love the bread Mom makes. The best. Hearing that made me so happy. I was glad I made the effort this morning. Seeing my family happy made me smile too. Then I noticed Jessica again looking over with an indirectly somber expression. Hey, Jessica, feel free to have some if you'd like. No, thank you. Jessica coldly declined and then silently began eating her own meal of oatmeal next to us. Mom should try some too, Emily. Even took bread-making classes. It's different from regular bread, so you should try it. My husband kept praising my bread. I felt a sense of appreciation for my husband for the first time in a while, and it made me happy. Despite my husband's urging, Jessica hardly reacted and quickly finished her meal, retreating to her room. The following day, Sean went to kindergarten, and I was left alone with Jessica. That day, my husband had mentioned he'd finished work early due to company circumstances and would be home in the afternoon. I was vacuuming and cleaning around the house. Jessica was sitting on the living room sofa watching TV, but suddenly turned it off in irritation and went to her room. She left covering her ears, so perhaps the sound of the vacuum had been too loud. Jessica, was that too loud? I'm sorry, I called out to her from outside her room, but got no response. Later, I went out to do some grocery shopping. To my surprise, this made me quite angry at Jessica. She's commanding around me, but with my husband there, she plays this sweet and fragile mother-in-law, considerate of her tyrannical daughter-in-law. The real trouble was that my husband, who should be on my side, completely sympathized with Jessica's side. It seemed that Jessica had sensed this too, framing me as the villain and herself as the tragic heroine attempting to knock me down. That's how it appeared to me. Jessica has always favored my husband. Even at family gatherings, she cared for him more than his own sister. She would constantly say Johnson, Johnson, offering him her homemade dishes or giving him money. His sister, my sister-in-law, must have felt that her brother was more loved. Although she's married and living far away, she doesn't seem very close with her own mother, and I got the impression she keeps her distance from her family home. My sister-in-law went to public middle and high schools and then to a vocational college. But my husband alone went through middle school exams to college and even had experience studying abroad. There might have always been a difference in how much money was spent on the siblings. Last year, the passing of my father-in-law probably fueled Jessica's obsession with her son even more. And then some time had passed as the full brunt of winter settled in. The cold intensified day by day in my area. The snow had already piled up and temperatures frequently dipped below freezing. One such day, which happened to be a holiday, I woke up early to bake homemade bread, a practice I used to do often when we first got married but had not done much since we moved in with Jessica. My husband had requested the day before, "I'd love to have some of Emily." I was speechless. To be lied about to this extent left me too shocked to find words. And you even ordered her to stay outside until you returned from shopping. I would never say that in this cold. Mom wouldn't be outside in just a shirt by her own choice, believe me. Please, I really didn't say that. Lucky I came back home a bit early. If I had been later, Mom might have collapsed from hypothermia. Johnson, it's okay. It's my fault. The most important person in this house is Emily. Even if Emily doesn't like me, I'm just grateful to be living with everyone. Mom completely fooled by Jessica's act. My husband turned to me and said, "Emily, you should experience how hard it is to be kicked out into the cold, realize how terrible what you've done is, and reflect on it." As he said this, my husband pushed me out the back door and locked it from the inside. No matter how much I knocked, there was no answer. I came straight from the kitchen, so I wasn't even wearing shoes. Eventually, snow began to fall from the overcast sky. I tried the front door, but it was also locked. When I went around to the veranda and peered through the glass door, Jessica noticed and quickly closed the curtains. I couldn't believe this. My body was getting colder by the minute. My feet were so cold I could hardly feel them. The frustration of Jessica's lies and my husband's complete deception, not believing me at all, brought tears to my eyes. I suddenly felt someone watching me. It was from the window of the house next door. Someone was staring intently at me. It was Michelle, the 83-year-old lady who lives next door with her son's family, and apparently, even her great-grandchildren. After a while, the front door of the neighboring house opened, and Michelle slowly came out, walking onto our property with the help of her cane. She looked at me, nodded slightly, and rang the bell. "Yes, it's Michelle from next door. Is Jessica around?" My husband opened the front door, and Jessica came out, wondering what was going on. "Yes, Jessica, your daughter-in-law has been outside barefoot for a while now. What's the meaning of this?" Well, that's because. And Johnson, what are you doing putting your wife out in the cold? The poor thing looks frozen. Michelle has lived next door for a long time, so she seems to know my husband since he was little. In a fluster, my husband said, "That's not it. My wife locked out my mother first. I just wanted her to know how painful it is." "Your wife locks out your mother?" "That couldn't be. I saw everything from the window of my room." "You saw everything from her window?" "She has a clear view of our house, which is why she noticed something was amiss. First, your daughter-in-law left in the car. Then, after a while, Jessica came out of the back door and stood outside. I was wondering what she was doing. Then Johnson returned in the car. Suddenly, Jessica started taking off the coat she had been wearing, then hurriedly took off her sweater too, tossed them into the house, and stripped down to her shirt, crouching down right there. Then Johnson came out, picked up Jessica, looking cold and huddled, and took her inside. I've been wondering what you all were up to." As Michelle finished, my husband looked at Jessica with a bewildered expression. Then this one comes back in the car, rushes into the house. Next thing, she's getting kicked out the back door, barefoot, wandering around the house looking cold. I thought to myself, this isn't right. Mom, is that true? Did Emily kick you out, or did you go outside on your own and took off your clothes yourself? Well, that's so you went outside by yourself, lied about your daughter-in-law kicking you out, and then Johnson believed you and kicked out his wife. Is that it? What foolishness. Jessica squirmed, exposed by the unraveling story. Always bad-mouthing your daughter-in-law. Yet you're not the type to cry over getting kicked out, are you, Jessica? Hey, Johnson's usually gone for work, he might not know. But your wife, she's been made to shovel snow for hours on her own. I've seen it from my place. Is that true? Yeah, Jessica's there, bossing her around, do this, do that. Watching Johnson's wife work like that made me feel sorry for her. Not just shoveling snow. In warmer seasons, I've seen her weeding the garden endlessly. I had no idea. Anyway, the kids' feet are red from the cold. Let her in quick. Urged by Michelle, I stood at the entryway and went inside. My feet were bright red from the cold. We invited Michelle in as well. There's no way this kind person could be mean to Jessica. She helped me at the hospital recently. Helped? I left my bag on a chair, and just when I panicked, she noticed and brought it to me. That was a real save. Thanks. No, it's nothing. Someone as kind as her wouldn't drive Jessica out. It's the other way around. Jessica's the one being cruel to her daughter-in-law. With these words thrown at her, Jessica started sweating and her face turned ashen. I had tough times with my mother-in-law when I was younger too, but you shouldn't do to others what you don't want done to you. I don't mean to meddle, but pushing your daughter-in-law like this is just sad, Jessica. Stop this nonsense. Yes, Jessica. Slumped down, defeated with that, Michelle slowly made her way back to her own house. Sorry, Emily. I believed everything my mother said, thinking you were harsh to her. But it was the other way around. I've been foolish, always blaming you. Forgive me. Johnson, Mom, why did you have to tell such a lie? Well, it's just that, Johnson, my dear Johnson, it seems like Emily took you away from me. When I saw you getting along with Emily, I felt so jealous. It turns out Jessica always interrupted the conversations between my husband and me because of this reason. She felt as if she had lost her own son to me and told such lies to garner sympathy for herself. My feelings had moved beyond anger to sheer astonishment. Johnson, who's more important to you, me or Emily? At this point, Jessica asked such a question. She must see me as a rival, competing for a man's attention. After a moment of silence, my husband said, Emily, what? You're kidding, right? Johnson, my most important partner is Emily. How can this be? After I went through the pain of childbirth for you, after I poured out love and raised you all this time, you're going to abandon me. Of course, I appreciate and care for you, Mom, but once married, my wife, Emily, is the one I must cherish the most. With these words, Jessica's spirit deflated. She bowed her head, overcome by a sense of defeat. Later on, we discussed and decided to end our living arrangement together. We decided to live just the three of us again. Initially, we moved in with Jessica at her behest, but since she lives nearby, we can always come to help if needed. So we concluded that it wasn't necessary to share our lives that closely. Jessica was quite resistant at first, but eventually seemed to give up, seeing the firm resolve in her son. And so we moved and began living as a family of three in an apartment again. Although we now live separately, we sometimes made opportunities to dine out together with Jessica. She seemed genuinely happy about it. Eventually, Jessica started attending a local cultural school, made friends with similar hobbies, and began to live a busy life much brighter and more enjoyable than when she was dependent on her son. I was filled with gratitude for my husband who had affirmed that I was his priority. There was a time when I felt so misunderstood that I wanted to leave, but now I've come to trust him wholeheartedly. Whenever I visit Jessica's house, I make sure to greet our neighbor Michelle. Michelle, despite her age, is very grounded and sometimes watches her great-grandchildren play in the garden. I respect and am grateful for Michelle, who watched over and defended me from next door. I wish for Jessica and Michelle to live a long and healthy life.